Right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our second CxObytes. Last week we talked with Jason Paris and we're able to get some great leadership examples out of him. And this week we're really fortunate to be talking to Caroline Rainsford, who is the Country Director for Google. Good afternoon, Caroline.
Hi, Craig. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Hey, look, what I thought we'd just start with is one of the things, obviously, we're all working from home. This is not a cafe, but it's much better than the background that you would see if I didn't have it on. What's your setup, Caroline? And also, I understand we had to do this on a Thursday because you do homeschool. You're in charge on Fridays at home.
Yep, Craig, you're totally right. So my setup at home, well, actually, Google is pretty prepared for working from home because it's very much part of our culture at Google. So I've got a home office. It's downstairs, so I call it my little cave. But yeah, so during working from home, I've had to adjust my week because I have two little ones. I have a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. And so on a Monday and a Friday, I turn into homeschooling teacher, and I have to look after the little guys. So I am adjusting my working week, which is great to also be able to show my team that I'm doing that. And so, yes, so they come and they spend time on a lot of video conferences with me, but on a Monday and Friday, I spend the days with them.
Ah, right. Well, of course, today is the last day of the week as well, which is whether tomorrow is going to feel any different. But we can talk about that later. Maybe you can talk about some of your experience of being at home. Can you give us, before we get into it, we haven't had you do any Flint events before. We've talked about it, but maybe you could talk a little bit about, how you've got to this position that you're in now, and a little bit about your backstory, just to introduce yourself to everybody.
Yeah, sure, Craig. So I started out my career as a budding young marketeer. So I was in marketing roles, primarily in the consumer space. And in the mid-2000s, I got the opportunity to go and work up in the Middle East and Africa and Turkey. So I took on a regional marketing leadership role, and I went up there and I ended up spending 5 years up there working in markets like Iran, Saudi, and all over Africa, and I absolutely loved it. It was some of the best 5 years of my life, and so I'm really glad that I sort of stepped out of my comfort zone to take that position. It wasn't the normal one. I could have gone to the UK or Australia very easily, but I did that. And then when I came back, I was working there for Philips Consumer Electronics, so the Dutch company, but I was also doing healthcare work in Philips Healthcare. And when I came back to New Zealand, I ended up working for General Electric, and actually primarily in the finance side of the business. So I changed industries completely and spent 5 years working there, and then worked through the divestment of GE Capital business to a private equity consortium, and worked through the digital transformation and rebranding of that business to now what you'll know as Latitude or GEM in New Zealand. And then I had my 2 lovely children. And while I was on maternity leave with my second child, or my son William, Google rang me and said, "We want an amazing New Zealand leader." And I said, "Well, why are you calling me?" And, anyway, the long story is that I've now been at Google for 2.5 years, leading the business in the commercial sense, but also making sure that Google is supporting Kiwis as we move forward into a digital era, and making sure that we're here and investing and growing in the right way to support New Zealand and the economy. So that's me now.
That's cool. Maybe we could ask you a little bit more about you work for a large multinational. You're in New Zealand. How does that work? Given the time difference, given that they're so big and we're so small. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, so the sort of beauty of it, Craig, is that we get to take all the very best of what Google offers globally. So it's a phenomenal company in terms of the way we look after our people, the way we train our people. And so we get to get all of that benefit, and we get all of the perks like the amazing Google Office, with our hokey pokey dairy, where the team gets fed from the minute they walk in to the minute they leave. They're missing that at the moment. but we also get all the amazing product development. But at the same time, we also in New Zealand get to be very much our own Google team, and we're a family in New Zealand. We're just on 50 people in New Zealand, and growing, but it's still small enough that we feel like a family, and we have very much our own unique Google New Zealand culture. But we also get to really drive our own pathway. We still are able to influence products for New Zealand, but we also get to do things the way we want. So examples of that is, we just took the Street View camera, we took it off the top of a car, and a few years ago we put it on the back of someone's backpack and did the Great Walks, but we've just strapped it to the front of a boat and taken it down the Waikato River. So we are able to do really cool New Zealand projects, and we're able to help New Zealand businesses in our own unique way, but still having that global support behind us. But we're pretty unique. Google globally likes Google in New Zealand because New Zealand is nimble, we love to innovate, and we're also an incredibly advanced market in terms of consumer behaviour and tech adoption. So Google likes to trial things in New Zealand, and there have been some really cool examples of that over the last few years.
Cool. I didn't realise, is that Street View camera based in New Zealand, or is it just visits?
Yeah, no, so we've got a couple of permanent Street View cars roaming the streets of New Zealand, and then we have other ones that we can use for things like the Great Walks or Waikato River. So if anyone's got any cool ideas, we love to hear about people that are passionate. We're thinking about doing the bike trail. But we love hearing ideas of what we should do next, because we want to showcase New Zealand's beauty to the world, of course.
Of course, that will be after the lockdown.
Yeah.
Hey, can I just remind people that are dialed in that you can ask questions? There's a little button at the bottom of the screen with Q&A, and so you can, if you've got anything you want us to ask Caroline, you can put it in there. Look, before I am going to ask you another Google question, because I was looking at some stats today. Now, Vodafone put some stats out saying they're seeing YouTube, for example, they're seeing the usage of that ramping up during the day. So whereas they used to see it starting about 5 o'clock, it's now at 9 o'clock in the morning. Now, obviously, I think that might change when the school holidays. Well, when kids go back to learning at school. But what other things have you noticed in your role that's happening during this time for Google?
Yeah, so I mean, look, lots is the answer, and I'm quite excited by this period because I think that so many things we're seeing emerge we won't go back to. So for example, we're seeing, so one of the other things, so Craig, you're right, in YouTube what we're seeing is that, you know how in a traditional sense we used to talk about prime time, and prime time on TV was that 6 p.m. till 10 p.m. slot where we all sat down and watched TV. And now with video on demand and platforms like YouTube now being the #1 daily reach channel in New Zealand, we are seeing that everyone has their own private prime time. So when Craig wants to watch content, it's in his own time, or when I want to watch content, it's in my own time, but it's also in our own way. So we are seeing that we're seeing increasingly huge numbers, particularly in the under 40s, around increased viewing time. But we're also seeing the emergence of categories where people are learning, and during COVID, people are going into YouTube and searching how to learn French, or how to learn the guitar, or how to make origami with the kids. And so we're seeing a huge resurgence in that, but we're also seeing people using platforms like online video to do things together as a family. So they'll be watching content together that supports the learning of the learning or education of their family.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Craig, we're also seeing some things online that are not great. So we're working really closely with the government around trends around mental illness and mental health, and things like online gambling go up during periods like this. So we are working really, really closely with the government on that, and supporting them to make sure that we're addressing some of these areas that unfortunately we do see. But on the whole, there's some really great trends that are coming out. The fact that we're all on this webinar, we're running a lot of Google webinars. We're getting unbelievable attendance. And in the past, we've always said, not enough demand for people to sit on a screen for an hour. There is, and I think this will change the way we interact and communicate together so much more.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's going to change the way we do our business as a membership association.
Cool.
And most associations are having to figure out how to work in this new, I mean, we're a tech users association. We should have been doing this ages ago, but this is, don't waste a good crisis is my word. So yeah, we've got into that. Look, I'm going to ask you some leadership questions now, because this is what this is about. So, and the first one is a bit of a weird one, but I'll ask you. You've had a varied background, a number of different countries and companies. Can you think of an example back over your journey where, on reflection, you might have done something a little bit differently, and how's it influenced the way you do things now?
Yeah, so I mean, Craig, like I think, in all honesty, reflecting on that, I don't regret any part of my career journey to date, in terms of the decisions I've made around countries and companies, etc. Because I've just honestly, I think the most important thing that I've experienced is that if you can find just passion for what you do, you never really work a day in your life. So I encourage everyone listening to try and find that. But I've made heaps of leadership mistakes. Like there's not many days that go by where I don't make leadership mistakes. In the Middle East, I could tell you about times where I'd made mistakes because of my lack of cultural understanding in markets like Saudi or Iran. I didn't in Saudi. I didn't realize that in Saudi and Iran you don't shake hands. What they don't shake hands with women, and they actually kiss. The men kiss. So there were lots of mistakes that I made in that regard. And I think the most important thing with leadership is that you constantly reflect. We had a team meeting just a week ago where I realized that I gave some negative feedback in front of the whole team that I probably should have done one-on-one, because it was still a really optimistic and great opportunity that we were discussing, and my feedback could have been done in a different way. So I constantly make leadership mistakes. And I think that the most important thing about leadership is that you just have an awareness for that, and you look for feedback. The most common question I ask my team is that if Caro was to, drop dead tomorrow, what would you do differently? Because it's just a way of inciting actually quite useful feedback that if you just ask them, give me some feedback, they don't tell you. But if you ask them what they'd do differently if I wasn't here, you get some really good insights. So I think good leaders are really aware of this and want to learn and be better all the time.
Yeah, well, can we just swing that question around the other way then? Because there's a question in here which I thought I'd pick up on. We've asked you what you do differently. What's your proudest moment in times as a leader?
Easily the people. So by that I mean the phenomenal marketing manager that's now CEO of an insurance company that was in my team that I coached and mentored and developed, or the person, the individual, like one of the team members that up in Dubai that's now running their own really successful business. And it's by far the people. Like for me, it's by far the people. Like you get to a point in your leadership journey where what's going to be important to you and what you're going to reflect on when you're at retirement will 100% be the amazing people or the successes that you feel like maybe you've contributed to in some way. And that's what I'm most proud of. But I'm also really proud of the fact that I've taken some risk in my career. I haven't said no a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I am pretty proud that I've changed industries, I've changed countries, and I've always backed myself, even when I've been literally trying to talk Google out of hiring me. I was like, I'm still proud that I've done it. And you realize when you do that there is actually value that you can bring, and you can be pretty kick-ass if you give it a go.
That's look, we've only done 2 of these, but there's a common theme coming through, which is when an opportunity comes up, you think seriously about it, and you don't say no just straight off. You work it out, and that's great. Hey, look, what about other leaders? What other leaders have you looked up to during your journey? There's a couple of questions that have come through on that. And don't say the CEO of Google. Well, no, you can, but
Well, so there's so many leaders that I look up to. This is going to sound really cheesy in this environment, but I have to interact with her. We're the exact same age. We're both mothers, but I have an incredible amount of respect for our country leader, Jacinda. Like for me, and the idea of authentic leadership is so, so important. I believe in showing up and bringing your whole self to work. I believe that psychological safety is one of the most important things that we can bring to an organization, and that comes from leadership where you build trust, inclusiveness, and that you care about more than the business. For me turning up to work every day, or turning up to video conferences in my pajamas with the team, it's more than about just talking about the business. It's about talking about them as people. And I know everyone's dogs' names. I know everyone's children's names, and I want them to know that I care and that they can trust me. Yeah. So Jacinda, for me, embodies that, and it's what's, I think, been so strong in the last particularly 18 months is how she's been able to lead with authenticity. But I interact with pretty much all of the big CEOs in New Zealand. If they're all listening, I have a CEO Richter scale where I rate the CEOs that I meet. And, some of the CEOs that I really, really respect are the ones that are humble enough to also say to me, like Jolie Hudson's an example of a female leader that I really respect at Spark. She's relatively new into that role after Simon Mooder's very long tenure. And she's done an incredible job of coming to that role and making it her own, transforming the leadership team at Spark. But she's also humble enough to talk about her imposter syndrome and what she needs to still learn. And the CEOs that come to me and say, Caro, I need your help. I don't understand the world of digital. They're the leaders that I also really admire, because that takes quite a lot of bravery at that level to say that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I've met some CEOs who obviously think they do know everything, but the good ones, the ones like us, are the ones that realise that we have to figure this out as we go. And certainly I know when I started in this role, having gone from a corporate role where, in corporates you're nicely shaped, you've got boundaries around what you can and can't do. And then when you get into these sorts of roles, those are gone, and you've got to cover a whole lot of things and speak into a lot of situations. And that humbleness and ability to look for help is something really important. I think that's something that particularly, and this is about you, not about me, but the young people that we deal with, that's something we need to encourage in them as well, is to ask people around them and ask others for help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. So when you're looking for leaders, so as the CEO of Google in New Zealand, you're looking for people who can lead. What are you looking for?
So the number one thing that I look for is I'm really big on passion. So I believe that if someone's got passion and they've got the right attitude and they really want to do something, that I believe you can teach them a lot of that. And at Google, we kind of back ourselves that we don't need, machine learning or artificial intelligence experts, but we need people that can back themselves to learn. So I really value that. I look for incredibly good communicators that have strong empathy, and again are going to be trusted by their teams. Honesty and trust are important things. And I look for people also that are able to inspire around a vision and a mission, because I think that in leadership, a lot of what we do is get people really excited and motivated by that higher purpose that we've all got. And if you find leaders that can do that, then the rest just kind of comes. If you speak to the All Blacks, they'll tell you that, if you speak to Richie McCaw, for example, he'll talk about the fact that he always wanted as a leader to create the environment, and then performance comes. You create the right environment and then the rest follows. So, but yeah, I care a lot about passion and also emotional intelligence as well. I think that I like to be able to think that the leaders that I've got at Google know that during a period like COVID, they know when their team members need a little bit of a pep talk or a little bit of a celebration or a laugh. And not everyone can do that. That's good EQ and intuition, and that's important.
Yeah, those are really good. Let's just tease that out a little bit, because, we're in the middle of this pandemic, and today the numbers are lower, so that's great. But still, it's an unprecedented event. I mean, I've never lived through anything like this. Even my parents, and they were born in 1940, so they were at the tail end of the war, but they weren't old enough, so they've never really lived through something like this. Do you still see those same skills being important in this time? And maybe tease that a little bit more. What about you? What do you see in yourself, the skills that you've got that are coming to the fore at the moment during this time?
Yes, Craig, you're spot on. They're even more important during a period like this. So, being passionate and being able to have a little bit of fun at the moment is really important. So I begin my week with an hour with the team, which is, we talk about important messages, but there's always fun. There's dressing up, there's dancing, we still are celebrating in this moment. And I think that one of the skills that I've just mentioned that's even more important during COVID is you've got to have enough emotional intelligence and understanding of your team to know the people that are maybe not showing up to the video calls, or have been a little bit quieter during these periods. I've got a little tricks of the team, and if I see them on one of the chat groups, or if I see them on the videos that couple of times a week that we have, I just put a little note just so I know that they're still, and that's that's important. So I think you've got to have that sense of your people. But I also think that the leadership qualities during this period that are important is you've got to be able to hold strong to that mission that you have, because you might execute slightly differently in this period, but the mission that you want the team to believe in, I think at the moment leadership needs to hold that steady, and the way you execute on it might be different, but you can still hold them to that purpose and that mission that they have. But you've also got to balance. Good leaders at the moment are balancing the short term with the long term. Google's a very commercial business in New Zealand, so we derive revenue from people advertising on YouTube or the various Google platforms. But my team aren't talking to any of the businesses in New Zealand about that right now. They're talking to them about how they can be helpful, how we can help the supermarkets with their, opening hours, or their, busy periods when you search for your local New World store or Pack and Save store. We're helping businesses with insights. We're helping travel or tourism companies at the moment think about how they can innovate and pivot their businesses that are not going to otherwise be okay in a year. So a big part of what we're doing is really balancing, okay, we've got some short-term things we've got to deliver, but how do we also keep the long-term in mind? Because these businesses will come back, and likewise our Google business will come back, but we're just trying to do the right thing at the moment, and good leaders will recognize that, and not get sort of caught up in the now.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, we've certainly been using some of your insight and data in our members' newsletters, and just sending them stuff out and pointing them in your direction. So that's been incredibly helpful. Look, let's get a little bit personal now and just talk about, in this time of isolation, you're used to working at home, but this is even more so because you've got more days at home. What are the things you've done or you've learned that kept you focused over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, so look, I just thought it would be helpful to say that I've had my really, really good days, and I've also had my bad days, and I think everyone has. And I don't know about anyone on the call, but particularly this week. The first week was kind of this novelty and quite fun, and there was some adrenaline. And then, this week's been a little bit harder, but which is what I hear from a lot of countries around the world, that this is our hardest week. So we're nearly through it. But I think for me, one of the things that I did was I keep reminding myself to be kind to myself and to constantly assess what's possible. I bet that everybody that's on this call, because otherwise you wouldn't be on this call, is an overachiever or has really high expectations of themselves. And I think what you've got to do is constantly assess what's possible in this period. And I discussed that with my manager, you know, both in Sydney and further afield, around what am I going to be able to deliver in this period, and we've aligned on that, and it made me feel good, but also my manager really loved it. And so my change in my working week, but also I've set really clear KPIs for this period, so I know, and my team knows what I'm focused on, because I can't do everything, and neither can any of you. So that's been really important for me. So I spend at least an hour at the beginning of every week just re-looking at my priorities and saying, Caroline, you're not going to be able to run at your usual 140% capacity. So what do you need to pull back on? But like, I also am making sure that I connect and communicate. I'm someone that derives energy from being in the office and around others. So I make sure that I am connecting. We have a daily stand-up in the team where we just talk crap. And that's really good, just to kind of re-energize you. And I make sure I also reach out to my peers. So I'm also part of an industry group where all the leaders of New Zealand sort of large media or tech companies get together, and we just have a good old chat as well. And things like that, just to keep me motivated. But I'm also making sure that I do loads of exercise, and I'm trying to also make sure that I actually set times to get up from my desk and eat and go for a walk. And
yeah, okay. Look, I know we're running out of time. Can I just do a couple of quick fire questions for you, and just short answers, particularly so what's the coolest, most rewarding project you've ever worked on?
Oh, so many. Probably launching businesses in some of the African countries.
Yeah.
When I was up in that part of the world, phenomenal people, and just seeing how simply you can drive amazing business growth up there. Yeah, that would be
okay. And what's the best career advice you've received?
Easily embrace all opportunities. I know this is hard because you're not going to love every day, but if you can love 80% of what you're doing, you're on the right track. That has been the most important thing for me. My Richter scale of whether I make a decision or not is on whether I think I can be passionate about it. And it's always served me really well. But yeah, definitely embrace the opportunities. And the other thing is never underestimate the meeting anybody. I treat every person like they could go on to be the future Prime Minister, because you just never know what that meeting's going to be. And that's young and old, rich and poor, educated or not. Like, just embrace every person.
Yeah, that's cool. Yep. So last thing I'll ask you is, you know, you talked about it earlier about having bad days and good days, and I certainly have felt that during this time as well. I'm a little bit like you. I do get energized by meeting with people and stuff, but so we're going to all feel those different emotions, and we are heading into the hard time. We're heading into week 3 and 4. Is there any other pieces of advice that you'd want to give people right now, just to finish off with?
It's just what I said before. So be kind to yourself, but also be incredibly optimistic. You know, I am seeing firsthand so many exciting things that are going to come out of this. In terms of digital innovation, New Zealand is going to be an amazing place post this. So be optimistic and positive, and just embrace also working out what's important in your life.
Yeah.
You know, like, how many people are getting to know their neighbours or bringing their parents more, and this is a good opportunity for us to reset in that regard. But I'm excited about life post COVID. We're going to see some great stuff.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Caroline, for joining us today. We try to keep this to half an hour. Look, I know it's incredibly busy for you. As I said, we're all working hard. Thank you, everybody, for participating today. If you want to see this again, the video will be uploaded on the website and YouTube. We are using YouTube. We have a channel. So it'll be uploaded sometime this afternoon, and you can share it or view it again. And if you haven't signed up to hear about our events, flint.nz, simple website. If you pop over there, you can have a look. Next week, we've got a seminar series starting on working from home. That's a 3-week series. And then there's one on 5G. the interesting thing about 5G, that's one of the topics that YouTube is keeping an eye on at the moment because of the conspiracy theories around COVID and 5G. I thought the Prime Minister's answer yesterday was brilliant. So next week, so again, thank you, Caroline. Next week on Friday, we're back to the last day of the week. We're talking to Craig Hudson, who is the MD of Xero in New Zealand. And he's a great guy, ex-Sevens player, and now heads up Xero New Zealand. And you can pop over to Eventbrite and register there. But otherwise, thank you very much, Caroline, and hope to see you again.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.